Welcome to CannaBiz Conversations. I am the fortunate and lucky host of the show. My name is Sean Welsh. I am joined today by someone I've been following on LinkedIn for, I don't even know. It feels like forever. I forget because of COVID. I feel like I've been doing it a decade. I know I haven't been. So it's probably been 4 or 5 years. This woman, I love her content, but it's the photo shoots, it's the extravagance that goes on between the world of women's wellness and cannabis, and in the middle of it is Mandy Lile. Mandy, how are you today?
I'm great, Sean. It's actually been a little chilly, so I'm just getting warmed up into the new year, and I'm doing great. I'm high and happy.
Who is it, right? I love it. That's awesome. So, Mandy, you've been in this space a long time. You're someone who I know has a lot of passion for the plant. That's always our goal here, to get the plant to the next level. Tell us, where did it begin with you and the plant? And I'm talking the earliest stages, and then we'll sort of talk about when you found there to be value, if potentially you found it recreationally as a kid first.
So my dad, there's a big history here, and it goes back to when I was a little girl. So I've been walking in grow rooms for as long as I can remember illegally. My dad actually spent 15 years of my life in prison for marijuana. I wasn't sure if you're aware of that, but
I was not.
I spent more time visiting my father in prisons than most kids, went to Disneyland. I was at Atlanta prison. So I spent a lot of time wondering why my dad kept going to jail for a plant. I just could not figure it out because so many more drastic things were going on in our neighborhood that I thought needed way more attention than our little garden in our house. But as I got older, I started to realize what was really going on. And my dad was very transparent about cannabis to me, and I probably wrote a few of his joints for him as a child. I know it sounds horrible, but I'm sure a few kids have been to the refrigerator to fetch a beer for their dad. So
Agreed.
I've wrote a few joints in my life when I was younger. I laugh about it now because I also watched a lot of other people come in my dad's house and buy other drugs. And I found quickly that, to me, the people coming in and buying the plant looked much different than the people coming in after the pain pills that my dad was copying from doctors. So right away, I had a real sour feeling about big pharma, and couldn't realize that what my dad was doing they were comparing it as, being so bad. I was like, well, what about the legal drug dealers in these lab coats? This is a real problem. So I think I was a very old soul. I think I've been connected to this plant longer than people realize. And I just watched my dad's different behaviors of how he acted when he did one thing or the other. And I think I learned a lot from his mistakes, his friends' mistakes. And it kind of got me on a different path than what most people had predicted I would be on. I think a lot of people thought I was going to be a troubled child and that I was going to be a drug dealer and, that I wasn't good for their kids to hang out with. But then they soon figured out that I was a very good influence for their kids. I kept their kids out of trouble as we became friends. And my best friend's dad was the judge in our small town. So I had a really different life than my dad, but I lived a lot of that stigma because of who my dad was. So growing up, I was a drug dealer's daughter in town. And it's sad because my grandparents were perfect church people. My dad's mom and dad were chopping down the weed as fast as my dad was trying to grow it behind the barn. So it was really neat to kind of be in the middle of that. But at the same time, I guess most people would have thought I had a traumatized childhood. But I think it really got me to where I am today as the hard worker I am today. And here I am now legally selling cannabis. So it's really kind of, it's ironic. It's just,
yeah, no, it's
been
awesome.
really.
I mean, you say it like that, the drug dealer's daughter, right? Like, what an interesting way to sort of present, which is what fact is. And I think the stigma you talk about is very interesting. I believe in the pre-show you said you grew up in the South, right? So that's where this.
I grew up in Kentucky, so it's still a non-cannabis state,
Yeah, so in the South, right, where, as we talked about, cannabis still is on the back burner of thoughts and what people are looking at. But when you grew up as a kid, you talked about the idea that sort of when you were branded as the drug dealer's daughter, potentially that would make it, stay away from Mandy, don't go by Mandy, she can't be helped. But the other comment that stood out to me was that you said you didn't follow the path many thought you would have. And I think, to me, when you say that, I think about the fact that we assume if parent goes to prison, child will follow and go to prison, because how could they know anything else? Where else would they learn it? And to be fair, if your parent goes to prison for a plant, you're probably going to be less confused than if your parent went to prison for, stealing from your neighbors. And so I
Right.
think that there's this connection of people in prison. You hear it, your dad's life completely upended and ruined for 15 years over a plant. Now, obviously, sounds like potentially maybe a little more than a plant, you know what I mean, if we're involved in pharmaceuticals, but at the end of the day, this is what you see. When did you realize as an individual, if this you're a small child, what age did you realize that you wanted to do something more with the plant, or that it was going to be a part of your future?
I think what happened was I ended up going into the beauty industry because I always in my life had to take ugly situations and make them look better. Even with, being a small child and playing Barbies in my room and living vicariously through Barbie and creating the life as a child. I think when we're a child is when our mind's the purest. And before we get into school, we have so many different dreams and visions. And I think that I think just playing Barbies and creating the life I wanted, I was literally manifesting the life that I'm living today.
I love it. Young age manifestation, right? You're there. You don't realize you're putting the pieces together. You're sort of, having it all happen. So when do you start to get into the either medical or rec side? Like, when do you start to really get your career running in the cannabis space?
So when I was 20, I built my first skincare clinic in my small town. I became very well known in the community. Those people still actually rally for me today. They're my community. Like, so my entire small town, after they watched me grow up, they're like, wow, she just keeps defining the
drug dealer's
odds.
daughter has a career. Yeah, right. Yeah.
She's building a new office,
Yeah.
and people always did love me, even though, I still felt there was the stigma against me because of my father. I never felt not loved. I never felt not popular, because I was popular because all the cool kids was coming to my dad's house to buy the cannabis. So to them, I was cool. It was their parents that I wasn't so cool about in the beginning. But I guess that when I turned 20 and I built the skincare clinic, I've always been partial to nature and nature driven ingredients, and never really liked synthetic anything. So I think that's why I turned my nose up at big pharma, because they took those plants and lots of medicines and synthetically formulated those to get what they got. And then I watched it come straight out of the dirt into our mouths and saw what we got. And so I think just knowing that nature always provides, and just trusting the process of nature and the gods above, I guess, is what got me through it all. But I started to smoke cannabis when I probably was about 14 or 15, but I wasn't like a girl who had pot all the time and smoked all the time. I would just occasionally take a puff, and I think I regularly started smoking cannabis right when I got out of high school. I probably would, have an ounce on me, and that's a lot for a girl in Kentucky in an illegal state to have on her. But obviously I had lots of access to growers. So I smoked pot, but I found that I was smoking it to calm me down, because I'm very hyper and high strung, and I'm always thinking, and I'm always creating, and I'm always wanting to work. And I'm like, to me, I used it to find the balance in that high strungness that I had as a hormonal teenager, to kind of bring me back down. And I never wanted to do anything. If you go to the doctor and they say, are you depressed? And let me write you a prescription. I never wanted any kind of pill. I didn't want to alter my body from a natural state. So I just think I've always chose cannabis because of its nature, of where it comes from. So I never was mad at my dad for the plant. I was never turned my nose against cannabis. I knew that there was something bigger there. I almost felt like we were being suppressed from it for a bigger reason. And later, as I got older, I realized that Rockefeller in the 20s, when he got his hands on medicine and modernized it, is where, excuse my language, all of the what fuckery started, you know?
And there's a good level
So
of that too, right? There's a good level of the fuckery you do with big pharma. You talk about making it synthetic, trying to get it to be this kind of corporatized animal that it is. And you do talk about the nature always provides. And I think that's a great way of saying it. I think that most people see this. And again, this plant has been here before any of us.
yep.
And it's written about in lores of the history of the world. And so to me, I've never really understood, much like you, the need for a problem with it, you know, only because it fights other political things. And so as I got older and I understood politics, then I understood why the plant wouldn't necessarily be a welcome participant in discussions today, because it's a plant that can grow freely, that can be here, you know, at a whim. And so people don't really get that. But the one other thing I liked about what you said, I tell people all the time that if people are like, Sean, how much caffeine, how much this, how much that? I said, I don't drink caffeine. I wake up this way. I get out of bed. The energy before you, this is it. And if you knew the amount of downers that I took on a daily basis, how many joints I smoked just to get here, you would tell me that they should legalize cannabis for anybody with ADHD, any of this stuff, you know, because at the end of the day, that was what they thought. Both my brother and I, you know, when we were younger, they were like, your kids need to go and get on meds and be an ADD. And it turned out we weren't being challenged. So they were like, oh, well, we need to like move them up a grade and give them a challenge and do all this stuff. And it's just, we take these pharmaceutical routes as this like answer to everything. And now it seems, Mandy, you know more probably about the space than I do, but women's health, it seems like now it's, you know, these fat loss drugs and these pills and these other things. And it just seems like it's just a never ending cycle of take something that's synthetic to get you to somewhere else.
I feel like I live in two worlds, Sean. I feel like that I live in a synthetic world because I have to, but I prefer the spirit world over here in nature and the desert. And I've lived in LA for 18 years. And when I drive back from my desert house into LA, I'm ready to get back over here. So I feel like there's two worlds, and the synthetic world is really dependent on that political government, the pharmaceuticals, all of the food that, you know, and then over in the spirit world, you have more your naturopathics, your plant medicine, your people who are shopping farmers markets, people who are more aware and awake of what's going on in this play that we're all in, and who the villains are. So, you know, I've watched The Pharmacist on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched The Pharmacist on Netflix, but it reminded me so much of what small town politics are when it's prescribing those drugs to those kids who are, you know, they get injured in a four-wheeler accident and their first round of Vicodin, they're hooked forever, you know, and there's other things they could have probably took that would have not been as addictive, like cannabis or RSO or, you know.
Yeah, it's a very sad state of affairs when we're immediately just like, hey, pound it on the pharmaceutical, get them on the drug, get them on the drug. But it's interesting, Mandy, you and I talked in the pre-show, and we're going to get into more of it, but the difference between men and women, okay? So like, I'll go to the doctor, I'll ask the doctor like, hey, back pain, muscle relaxer, dude will flip his script book as fast as he can and sign that thing. Wife will go in, say, hey, back pain, muscle relaxer, will be like, nope, sorry, it's not, you don't actually have that problem. Let's give you an anti-inflammatory. Let's give you something less, you know, and it's just like, well, wait, we both come in with the same thing. We both get totally different answers as to what our answer is. Now they're both about drugs, but it's just interesting. And I can't imagine how further that gets down the line. You know what I mean?
Down the rabbit hole. But listen to this. What about when you go into the doctor and nobody's asking you, what are you eating? Because doctors, I don't know if you know, but their curriculum doesn't include nutrition. And also their curriculum in med school doesn't include extensive thought on hormones, study on hormones. And the women's body is much more complex than the men, and we are much more prone to diseases than men. But most of the studies back in the day were done on men because women were home with the families and weren't able to leave to go do a case study for a physician to get this information.
Man, like I'm telling you, I'm learning now. My wife's in the process of, you know, doing some research for her own book. And in this book, she's talking about the history of women's health and this whole idea of hysteria. Like you came in, you know, and that was it. It was like, she has hysteria. Go put her in the corner. Go put her on something to put her, you know, to sleep for a while. She'll wake up. She'll feel better. And it's just amazing that as men, you'd walk in and they'd be like, holy cow, geez, bring out 13 doctors. Let's sit down. Let's study this dude. But for a woman, it's just, hey, you're being crazy again. And this has been going on since, you know, the freaking 20s. It's crazy to think that we talk about how far we've come societally, yet when you truly look at some things, we have made very little progress.
You
And I
got
don't
that
really
right.
understand why.
You got that right. You got that right. It feels like that. It's like, I don't know. It almost feels, everything just almost feels fake. Like, I can't even tell you, like, some days I go out and I'm like, why do I feel like I'm sitting here and there's a million people above me watching every move that I make in a way that it feels like it's fake. Not that I'm paranoid people are watching, or it just feels like that we are all being like the Truman Show. You know, it's like the Truman Show.
I made the exact same thing to my wife, Steph. We were on a hike the other day and I put my hiking pole down. I kind of hit this hollow piece of ground. I'm like, see, it's the set, Steph. I told you. I'm in the middle of it. I'm in a set. This is all made up shit, because at certain points it all feels like someone else is watching. And you talk about the two worlds thing, and I can't get away from it, because the idea of the synthetic LA, right? And the spirit desert, man, what a cool thought process, you know, to wrap my own mind around and to say, because that's how I felt. Like when I don't even like going to California anymore, because every time I go there, my wife and I don't have kids. So every time I go there, I feel like we're like these weird people, because everyone's got 70 kids or everyone's pregnant with 13 other kids. And it's all kids. I'm like, Steph, what's in the water here? Like I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want this to happen. But it's always this energy of like, the next thing, the next rush, the bigger than that. I live in the middle of nowhere of Wisconsin on purpose. I don't want to be around people. I don't want the bother. Your situation is like my dream, 100 acres of no one around me, growing my own weed, to just be left alone. It just sounds magical. How do you end up there from LA? What is the story of you to LA to the desert now? How does that work?
Right. So about almost 10 years ago, we ended up coming to the desert because we were obviously going, not only do I grow Potency Number 710, a beautiful cannabinoid skincare brand that's really taken off. And that's another thing real quick, Sean, before I jump, how I got from LA to the desert. I created Potency Number 710 in 2018 before the Farm Bill passed. I got word Harry was already having his hands a little in the cannabis space. We had 3 stores in LA at one point, cannabis dispensaries in North Hollywood, and the other end of the Valley Village. So we were in it with, 3 retail stores years ago. But while he was starting that, I've been an esthetician for 20, now let's see, I forget how, I'm 47. I've been at 27 years. I've been an esthetician. So I've always used, again, plant-driven products. My first skincare line I ever worked with was Yonka out of Paris, France, and they use all plant oils. So I was always obsessed with plant oils. I don't know if this connected me to the plant because of my father. That was my desire, was to work with plants. I don't know why I always was driven back to nature. I can't tell you why. It's just, thank God I was. So after I realized, I was going to work with this product, and when I got to LA, and I played around in LA a little bit before I settled down, because I'd worked so hard in Kentucky from my 20s up to my, late 20s, I'd had my skincare clinic. So when I got to LA and we started going into cannabis, I was nervous because I was like, oh, this is scary. I just came from, the Kentucky area, and I don't want to marry my dad. I don't want to grow up and be in this. And he's like, go to the courthouse with me, So I went to make sure it was a legit business before I even was going to engage with dating Harry at the time. And so when he was going into it, I was like, this is a no-brainer that I not get with a formulator and start working on a product, because I know skincare. I know how well the other plants already worked. I already know green tea was amazing. I already knew that I loved how lavender worked, rosemary worked. I already knew that I loved how those plants worked. And I'd already had 10 years behind the chair of watching people's skin respond in a positive way. So yeah. I'm like, this cannabinoids, CBD was coming out. We were going to be able to sell it across 50 states. And I'm like, we can't sell cannabis across 50 states. But what we can do is have a backup where if cannabis doesn't do what we want, I'm building a brand that has got the ingredient in it. So I launched with one product, the Potency Number 710 Gold Serum. and I launched with it, and it did well, but my consumers kept wanting more. So I started then getting the heat from social media, the censorship was coming. My trademark had got denied at first. I had to resubmit it because I submitted it before the Farm Bill passed. So I had to go back and resubmit my trademark after that Farm Bill passed for CBD. And I resubmitted. And then I thought, I don't want my second product to even have CBD in it. So I'll create a cleanser, which didn't need CBD in it anyway, so that if I'm kicked offline, I have another backup plan and a trademark that I can nurture in another way. So I don't just lose all my eggs in my basket. Because I was thinking, if they kick me off the web, offline for CBD, then I'll have one product with no CBD that I can still be as a standing product and build around. Because I was thinking all the money I'd already put into trademarking and all of the website and everything. I'm like, I don't want to just eat all this if they kick me off. So it almost was like I had a little bit of that fear that I had when I lived with my father, that I was going to have a knock on the door, that I was selling drugs online because I was selling a skincare product with CBD, because they made us feel like we were selling something really bad. And I knew it wasn't. So after I created Potency and I started to build the line out, Harry had wanted to start cultivating, because the real way to make money in this industry is to have a hold of your own supply chain and to grow and to have that retail shop at the same time.
It's the vertical integration dream I think many, many people have. And I think it's funny, before we get into this whole cultivation dream, I think it's funny how you didn't want to marry your dad, but we always end up doing it, don't we, Mandy?
Isn't that funny?
We always end up where we began. And it's a fun way to do it. I'm glad
the roots. We go back to our roots. We go back to our roots, Sean.
I like how you went and checked out, made sure it was legal first. I love that part of the bit where you're like, hold on a second. I don't believe you. Hold on.
I couldn't believe it.
Anyone who's an entrepreneur, if you've missed the last 5 minutes of this show, do yourself a favor and rewind it. Because this is what true entrepreneurship sounds like. It's about plan A, plan B, plan C, making sure that all of them lead back to the major plan, which is to build a brand, to do something important. And so if you are stopped, if there is a roadblock, have another way to go, but don't wait till the moment you hit the roadblock to figure that plan out. As I said, go back and listen to the last 5 minutes of Mandy telling you how to stack a brand and to protect it against almost anything that could happen against it. So Mandy, thank you for the entrepreneurial drop. I love it.
Thank you.
Let's move in now. So we're at Harry. We're at full cultivation.
Harry wants to grow. Yeah, Harry wants to grow. He wants to grow. He wants to get vertically integrated. We're done with our shops in LA. We were growing in the back of the shops in LA, but not on a large scale. And he realized real quickly, having those 3 retail shops, that we need to be able to grow on a large scale in order to feed those shops, and that was the way to make the money. So Harry also is an entrepreneur. And it's funny because we were both born in 1976, the year of the dragon. And it's funny because Harry's from Armenia originally. And here I am, this little white girl from Kentucky, just breaking the branch off of their family tree. And it's funny because it's like everything's just magnified, because you have this Armenian and this little white girl running around. So we're a fun couple to be around too, but he's a powerhouse in itself, as being a very patient entrepreneur is what he is. And he's very patient. He does most of the things and the dealings with the cannabis side of things, because I don't have the patience like he does for the city and all of their regulations that they throw at him and all the audits that he has to go through all the time. I don't have that as a woman. I would have done drove my Sprinter van.
Format in my house. It's, hey, Sean, are there details that have to be dealt with where patience is required? Could you please deal with that? And you need me to write a check or yell at somebody? Coach, give me a dial up. You know what I mean? That's my wife.
Yes.
She's happy to.
I think we're living the same way.
Sign off on a finance requisite or anything else. But if it gets into being patient and listening to you tell her a bunch of stories or have small talk with you about shit she don't care about, not interested, Mandy. She has no use for it.
Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is here too. So we ended up in the desert because Needles, California is exactly where we're at. It's in the middle of nowhere. It used to be an old train station town. So there's a nice train station in the middle of the town. It's on the original Route 66, which is really cool because I didn't realize how many Europeans love to travel the Mother Road. And so we get
So
a lot
weird,
of
isn't it?
people.
It's so weird. I've lived here my whole life and I still don't really get it, but yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, it is a beautiful road to travel, but it's been really, 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 really interesting to be here because it feels like I'm back in a small town in Kentucky.
yeah.
And so I did okay with the move because Harry was like, we're gonna slowly transition to the desert. And I was like, hell no, I'm not leaving LA. And then right when COVID was getting ready to hit, I was really considering coming out here more because I felt the shift in the energy change. And so as COVID hit and our son wasn't in private school anymore, he was just in the first grade. So he hadn't even been in school long enough to get a taste of school. So what happened to us then, as I was on packaging for Potency, I did have a helper, but I'm packaging. I have an employee that does all the back end of everything, but I do everything in-house. I have my facilities shipped to me, and then I do the direct-to-consumer model out of my home for now. So I've been growing this brand in my casita and my guest house, filling my closets up as we go. And I wasn't looking for a building. I didn't want a building. I wanted to see what I had, if it was golden enough or not to go further. So we ended up here in Needles. We have 2 buildings here. One of them is a beautiful 8,000 square foot building where we're vertically integrated. And we just added a massive volatile extraction room. And we're about to start doing extractions as well. So he's going to be able to do away with, touch the entire plant and do something with it. And then we have a smaller dispensary called 8th Street. Well, we recently bought an old bank, an old Washington Mutual. And I have an inside joke about that because I'm like, well, they wouldn't let us bank. So a couple of years ago, we bought our own bank. So we got this bank that we bought, an old Washington Mutual, which has the beautiful walk-in safe and everything. And we're just now starting the concrete work around this building because in California, there's so many licenses when you bring in a dispensary, they want you to do a new sidewalk, curb, and gutter, even though there's one already there. They want you to spend another 80 grand to do a new sidewalk, curb, and gutter for them. So we're doing the concrete work on this particular building right now. And Potency, my brand, will actually get to move in our old dispensary. And that's where I'm going to be distributing out of now and possibly open up a small storefront headquarters there of all things wellness, because this town lacks that, because like I said, there's not even a grocery store in this town. I have to drive about 15 miles into town to the closest grocery store. But there were 4 dispensaries here at the time, and we own 2 of those. Now there's, I think, 6 or 7 dispensaries here. We still own 2. But it's been exciting to watch my brand grow from one desk and one box of products in Hollywood to several cabinets of product and several boxes and lots of packaging, and not to even mention all the content that I'm doing around this product as well, like you'd mentioned earlier. But to get here and to watch Harry grow this all on his own, because we don't have any investors. This has been all of his own, so we are doing all of this by ourselves. And it's been really interesting.
You're dropping
really
the entrepreneurial nuggets here as we go along. I mean, self-funding, okay, big fan of that. However, I do provide the space with last mile funding. So I am there for people, but I believe in self-funding as far as you can. But if you do need a quick 30 to 50 grand, I'm always helpful there. I think that's helpful to be there. But here's the bigger one for you that I want to lay down again. If you missed Mandy saying this 5 minutes ago, rewind the show and listen again. She said she didn't want a building. She didn't want headaches until she could prove her fucking concept, people. The whole concept from start to finish, that it made money and made sense and was a product people would want. And now, only now, I think you've had your brand, what'd you say, 5 years, 6 years now?
I'm going to be 6 years old in March. I'll be 6
years old in March, okay? And she's just now getting her own building. That's a building as a recycled building throughout her own business ship. And now she's moving into a building 6 years into the brand. I started my brand a decade ago on the car business side. And so we just hired our first employee a year ago. It took me 9 years to believe that my company would exist long enough, make enough money to hire people to be a part of it. So
I love that, Sean.
Thank you again for dropping your nuggets. I love everything you're doing here. Let me ask you though, because I know it's an important topic right now, and I wanna, you've been more than gracious with your time, and I want to open this up to kind of your opportunity. You mentioned some stuff to me in the pre-show that still has my head spinning. Women's rights on social media, what can and cannot be said. Talk to me about more about this right now, because you're in the middle of doing something all about women's wellness and health. Why don't we jump into that and you tell the audience what you're into?
So while I was down the rabbit hole, getting the dirt in my eyes with the cannabis industry, literally growing and digging, and while I was down there in the rabbit hole, I realized that this wasn't just an attack on cannabis and plants in general. It was also an attack on women. And to me, maybe it's not an attack, but to me, it feels like quite a bit of an attack on women's wellness. So right now we figured out that there are over 50 words, and I've got articles to support all of this. Forbes just came out with one as well. First of all, I need to start off by saying there's over 2,000 femtech brands that exist that nobody knows exist. And all these investors are giving money to these brands, and then these brands get stuck because they don't have anywhere to advertise. Because if you're selling a tampon or a innovative period cup or a new breast pump, anything to do with some of those words I just said, breast, period, any of those words are censored on Meta. So it kind of gets these brands stuck to where they can't really do much on social media as far as advertising. So then they don't get to produce any results. They're losing a lot of money and they've got all this investor money, and then they get stuck. So I figured out with my partner, one of my partners, I call him my tech god, that was brought to me. He said, there's a problem here, and there's nowhere for these brands to have an outlet. And the problem's bigger because we first had started building the platform around women's cannabis. And then as you notice, the number of women in cannabis, the percentage is down to like 8% or less now of the percentage of women that's working in cannabis. So I was trying to pull the women together in the cannabis side, and I wasn't getting enough women to do what I do and work like I work. And I said, this is bigger than just cannabis. We need to lead through just women's wellness. And if they know that cannabis is a tool, then they can utilize that. If they don't want to utilize cannabis as the tool, there's other tools. But if they know, they know. So we started a world called a kindfineworld.com. It's KINDFINE world, WORLD.com. And a kindfineworld.com, when you go to this page, you're going to see this beautiful gold woman. And it's going to have her little button by her head, a button by her breast, a button by her vagina for V-City. So we've built out these different virtual interactive worlds for women to be able to engage and come and speak to these AIs that we are training right now all around menstruation, menopause, because I need to tell you that menopause, perimenopause, period, breast, some of those are some of the pelvic floor are some of the words that's censored on Meta. And I was on with a panel of doctors at an event in LA called Wise Paws, and the lady's account was banned because she showed an example of a real pelvic floor instead of using fruit as her diagram. And so she had used a real pelvic floor and it's got her hand smacked for that.
She got shadow banned for showing a part of the human body.
She did. But Sean, I can open Instagram every morning accidentally and straight up see a real girl's vagina dancing in front of me.
This is what I'm confused about. See, I'm not on any of this shit. I'm not on the TikToks or the Instagrams. My wife does that. And even just some of the stuff that they can scroll past in a given day, you're like, what the fuck was that? And how is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But to have an educational conversation with your wife, if I wanted to get on and talk about pelvic floor or hormones, we would be smacked on the hand according to Meta. So supposedly they're changing some of this, but until then, we've built this massive platform that's also a marketplace for people who, that way they can actually have the product to support the articles that we're bringing them. We've brought on the Physicians Cannabinoid Council as well. Helene Blanchett is doing some really cool things for the Physicians Cannabinoid Council. They're testing the products like Potency and Element Apothic and some of my other friends that have brands. they're testing these products and testing them a little bit deeper than just for the milligrams of the COA. They're testing for heavy metals. They're testing for, everything that they need to make sure that product, it can be legitimately recommended by a physician. So she's got the PCC, the Physician Cannabinoid Council. So we're going to be bringing on a lot of those physicians that we have at our fingertips. And we're bringing on a lot of other founders and experts in the women's, we just brought on a pelvic floor expert. So we're bringing on experts in this woman's body from different categories. And then we're not only going to be able to give you the information, we're going to be able to say, hey, here's some products that support what we just said. And we actually bring on brands as well. So right now we began populating these worlds. There does not need to be an avatar. You do not need an Oculus, and it works from your phone. And the women will get rewarded for coming to this world, or even men who have, I had a guy that said, I raised 3 daughters by myself. Where was you 20 years ago? So I have a lot of single dads that get lost in, what do I do? My little girl's starting her period kind of thing. And they don't even have the right place to get the information. And while there's all these different apps and different websites, how do people know they exist? How do people know to find them? They can't. It's hard. So us building this platform and buying a chunk of real estate like this is going to help us not adhere to Meta's licensing, and we kind of have more exposure.
Yeah, because now you're just partnering with Google at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you can put yourself and you can build a website, you can make yourself crawlable to Google SEO. I'm pretty sure Google doesn't have any restrictions around what they're trying. I mean, in that world, I'm sure they do have, with other things. But I mean, I think that building out your own marketplace is big. My buddy Aaron Raskin is building out the same thing in the cannabis space, trying to have a cannabis platform where people can just come and be able to sell their, products and have people consume and talk about consumption and not be, shadow banned. I mean, they've been working on it for a long time. It takes a lot of work, right? As you know, to build these things out and get them, but we need it. Like, we need platforms for people.
We need it.
That frankly, Mandy, that's why I created this show. This isn't something that makes me money. This is something that I do because I want to get the message out there for people like your story, like the people we've had on this show, like the people we plan to have on this show, who are doing important things for a plant that needs to be put up in the front of, everywhere else. But this is bigger than that. This is about women's rights. This is about women's wellness. And we know the attack that women's rights are under right now in this country. It's obvious. It's if you're not blind. And so with that,
the feminine and masculine are being attacked. How
has that fueled your passion right now with everything going on in our country regards to that?
So I try to stay out of politics. Like I said, I love to live over in the spirit world with my stick of sage and my side joint. And I try not to get too much into politics. Again, I think that is so much like, big politics and big pharma go together, right? So I just try to
one of the same as far as I'm concerned.
They are the same. And I just try to stay out of that world and not talk it, because again, I like to try to take ugly situations and make them beautiful. So the only way I know how to have a voice is to help my community that I have access to, and hope that community's touched and lets another community know. And then eventually I'm as big as Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So what I'm trying to do is imagine all those platforms together, because I also have our own platform that's like Facebook. We also have our own marketplace like Amazon. We're also going to have our own education, so we're also rewarding the women. The thing that I didn't mention is there's quizzes that the women will take, and not to shame them, but to let them know how much we don't know about our own body. So I took a quiz on the pelvic floor. There's 8 questions. I missed 6 of them. I'm a woman. And there's a huge percent of women that's even not sure about their own body parts. And where would we have gotten that education at? Because it's not out there. Yeah. It's not given to us. We're not taught this in school. The physicians aren't taught hormones, so they can't really talk to us about that unless they're a hormone specialist, So it's really hard to get the information as a consumer. So with these quizzes,
even hormone specialists don't really fall under the physician label anymore. I mean, the people we found are more in the, non-Western medicine, if you will, in that realm, right? And so you go in there and you meet with these people and they start talking to you about, well, have you considered this? Or have you considered your testosterone? And I think women stop and they're like, testosterone, what are you talking about? And, and you're all of a sudden, you're like, well, are you lacking this, this, and this? And my wife's like, yeah. She's like, well, that's because your testosterone's at like 4. when it needs to be at 400 or whatever the range, right? And so,
Right.
you know, I learned more in Stephanie and I went through her hormone stuff. I don't know, probably over 5-6 years ago when she was struggling with a lot of other shit. We couldn't figure it out. It comes down to it. No one ever, not one physician ever talked to her about her hormones. Not
Right.
once.
What they probably were talking to her about antidepressants and
Yep.
maybe arthritis medicine and surgery for carpal tunnel or something.
Yeah. No, it was like, hey, you had a full hysterectomy. Here's your estrogen
That's
that you
it.
get this little pill and that'll be enough and you'll be fine and see you later. We'll talk to you every 6 months. And it's not that way. It's not that way at all.
Yeah,
And now she uses
it's not.
bioidentical hormones to put herself in a position of, of happiness, of what she's doing. She removed
Right.
this part of her body, this part of pain, and then had to deal with totally different, not pain, but a totally different world of, not being herself. So women,
You don't feel yourself. Because I want to tell you something you may not know about women. I believe we have we're born 3 times, maybe more, because we're always changing into a different person. So first we have our period. That's where we first change. Then we have childbirth. If we don't go through giving birth to a child, we may miss that phase, but there's some things still going on there. And then menopause hits, perimenopause. So I feel like we're reborn 3 times and we go through so much more. But the thing is there's really no resource to go and make you feel okay about that, because you do go through a plethora of emotions of up and down like a roller coaster because of this. So with these quizzes, we're bringing attention to the women that, hey, we don't know as much about our body as we should. And now we're going to reward you for learning. So these women will get reward points for it's not a cryptocurrency, but it's a reward that they actually can spend within these 6-7 worlds that we've created around the vagina, the breast, the mental, the general wellness, whatever it may be. These women take the survey, they get say 50 reward points. Now they can stack up those points and they can go and they can shop at my marketplace with all these fintech brands and shop within that world and feel good about it and be smarter. So the fact that they're going to be getting rewarded and they're getting paid to be smarter and they get to buy their favorite products, it's just a no-brainer that I did this. So it's very exciting. We've just done a soft launch on a Kind Fine World this year. We're bringing in our founding members now. We're only taking 500 members at the $150 founding fee. It's a founding members fee. It's a one-time only fee for these first 500, and then the next 500 will pay $250. And then I imagine that it's going to only increase. We're going to try to keep it reachable, but I imagine it's going to increase because we've also connected to an agency that is providing us with an immense amount of emails. So we're going to be having an agency with inside of a Kind Fine World. So if people don't even want to be, a brand doesn't want to be part of a Kind Fine World, but they want access to our email database that we have access to, then we'll be able to accommodate them as well. So it's in stealth mode right now is what I call it, but we're growing and building on the back every day. Once you get into that website and show it to your wife, Sean, she's going to be like, holy hell, this is amazing. But you can see the beautiful woman when you go in and it's just, it makes it more exciting to go through perimenopause, because it is a time when you are like, what the hell's happening to my body? And what's going on with me, and why do I feel this way, and why do I hate everybody in my family right now one day, and then the next day I love them. So it's a good place to be for the women, and I think it's going to be a win-win in the end. So
it's a crazy place. I mean, I was joking with my dad. My dad was saying something to me. He's like, well, Mom dealing with menopause, this was many years ago. And I said, Dad, I've been dealing with my wife's menopause since she was 28. I said, I got to deal with it for 30 years, bro. Like, what are you talking about? Like, are you going to complain to me about the 6 months you've been dealing with this? Like, I don't want to hear it. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? And that's what I think Steffi's trying to explain to people, even women going through menopause. Like, you don't have to deal with this, right? You can go get hormones. You can go balance shit. You don't just have to accept the shittiness of menopause and the way that it like makes you feel. You can do more to be your own self-advocate. And that's really what she's working at. It's truly admirable. I love watching her. I love watching her get excited about it.
She's taking her own power back. And I love that. And I think a lot of us should, because a lot of us trusted so many of us trusted our doctors. And I think we all saw that they pretty much are just taking orders from a higher power, and that they don't know your body like you know your own body. And a number one thing that people aren't grasping is that food is medicine. And that is number one. It needs to start with, what are you eating? Are these foods causing more inflammation in your body? Or is this causing more heavy metals in your body to make you react this way? It's number one is nutrition. And people, once they grasp that food is medicine, I think that's going to be big, but they're still not grasping it.
It's an absolute huge one for me. And it's been mentioned here before. I had a Damian Solomon, the plant geek, on. He's an incredible guy in the space, and he was talking about the same thing, because he used to start in horticulture and food, and he said, but you don't realize that food is where it all begins, where you grow your food, how you grow your food, where it comes from, etc. So, and he was talking to me about using AI to have a better yield, just some crazy shit. But that's what the space does. That's what you guys are doing as entrepreneurs in the space. Is you're out there, you're inventing daily new concepts, new idea, a kind, fine world, something that wasn't a thing 3 years ago, 4 years ago, but you dreamed it, you saw it, you watched it, and now you're out there putting it to fruition, if you will. What is one recommendation that you would give to an entrepreneur going down your path, trying to create, whether it's a marketplace, whether it's just a large scale website to address? What would be one big tip that you've learned along the way of building a kind, fine world that you give to the entrepreneurs who watch our show?
That emails are like gold. And that email marketing has worked better for me than being in Vogue or Allure or any of those fancy magazines that I've been in. And that building your community around you and nurturing the community that continues to give to you, not forget about them. Your old clients are just as are more important than the new ones coming in, as important. But email marketing was a big, I think email marketing has been the best for me for my return on my investment. And I've done some big shows. I'm at a show every weekend. I'm somewhere popped up. I have one this weekend in Arizona. I have an LA next weekend at a studio opening up. And then I have an event going on in Miami that's passing out potency in Miami, and I'm not even there. So I'm in 3 different places in January. And that's me arranging all that and organizing all that. So just being kind, because if you're not kind to people, nothing good is going to come back to you. And even if you are kind to someone and that particular person is not kind back, someone else will come and save you, because you were kind. And, not everybody you hold the door for is going to hold it for you, but I'm not going to stop holding the door open for people if I see that they need help. So I think being kind, knowing how important your local community is, because I do a lot of stuff here on the radio, and I laugh because we've got all this stuff going on and people know me most from the radio. So when I go into an appointment and I say I'm Mandy, the girls are like, oh, are you Mandy from the radio? And I'm like, yeah. So I've really built a community here in Arizona, like I did in Kentucky in my hometown. And my hometown in Kentucky, because I was kind to all those people all those years, and I didn't burn any bridges in my hometown, they're supporting me today. They're the leg that I'm standing on. I've been here because of all everybody on my order list was Kentucky in the beginning. And now on year 6, I've got Kentucky, Alabama, California, Florida, Switzerland, I'm global. So it's just been really neat to watch, and just spoiling my members. I created a membership, I think was a really good idea, because it's like selling air, but it's not really air, because I am providing them with something. They pay $71.10 a year to be a Potency member right now. And that membership gives them better pricing on the product, because when I launched this, I was living in LA. So I didn't want to sell $100 bottle of serum that my people in Kentucky couldn't afford. Right. So I had to think about that demographic as much as I did the demographic I was living in. The girls in LA will throw $100 at you in a second. In Kentucky, they're a little different. So that's why I created the membership. I thought if they're loyal to me, they'll buy the membership to get their serum for $65 instead of $85. And then then I have this swag, these beautiful swag products that I have, fanny packs, all these things for them that I buy with that membership money. So I'm gifting them. When they buy something, I'm gifting them a stick of sage or a stick of Palo Santo, or, you know, I'm giving them extra stuff. So just spoiling the people that you have, keeping your members coming back, creating a membership, because it is like selling air. I didn't have to do anything to make that $71.10, except I'm going to, you know, make my members happy. Packaging was really important. I think your presentation is very important. Everybody on all my reviews, most of the people are always commenting on how they felt like they got a gift when they got the product. They forgot they paid for it.
No, that's
and
when I first saw the brand come out, it was via my buddy Tommy Dimmel. And Tommy
Yeah.
you'd sent Tommy a box or whatever the case was, and he was doing like an
Yes.
unopened deal, and it was just like, wow, look at that, so cool. It's all very awesome. So no, Mandy, and again, you know, this is the point of this show is to bring on people in positions of you know, entrepreneur building businesses, and today really has encapsulated that. So thank you so much for not only bringing passion for the plant, which we all love and appreciate, but also just talking about the rigors of being in business, and what decisions need to be made, and loyalty, and digging in with your own clients. You know, I was just having a discussion with a client that's been with me 7 years, and I just had to make a change to what we do. And I said, look, you know, I wanted to bring this to you last. I'm really sorry, but we're scaling the business. We're changing some things. So I need to make this small tweak. And he looks at me and he goes, Sean, I've been with you 7 years. You've never raised the price. Tweak away, you know, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm never leaving. And it was like, great. And he says, you sure you don't need to raise the price and make the tweak? And I'm like, no, dude, the tweak was enough for me to monetize my time on the back end. And I really appreciate it. And that's that loyalty. You can't buy consumer loyalty, not anymore. If you have it, you need to keep it, because just as valuable as an email is, and it's funny, email marketing, for all that we do, guess who ain't stopping you from putting any words you want in an email line, right? It's emails.
Right.
You can deliver whatever message you want. I mean, I get more spam porn email than I'll find on Google in a given day, right? So, I mean, it's not that weird, but you're killing it with this. So, Mandy, how do you want to tell people? I mean, how do we find you? Where do we go to find all
Okay,
things
so
Mandy?
I think the best place to go is to Potency, Potency, which means to make an impression, by the way. Potency710.com. And that leads you to all my other Facebook, Instagram. A Kind Fine World is another a place that you'll be led to from there. But just connecting with me through my website is one way. I offer sample packs for $12. It's free shipping. I pay all the shipping. And I'd love to have anyone come try it. I've collected over 300 before and after images of how the product actually performs. I've never had a return in 6 years. Nobody's ever wrote to me and said, I need to return this product.
Wow. Well, bravo to you for all that you've done and all that you're going to continue to do. I have a feeling you are just only getting started. And, I look forward to someday being in the desert with you, and I need to meet Harry. You've been hiding him on social media. I don't see anything here. I need to learn more, as is everyone else. So thank you so much for spending the time. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you all for joining us. The goal of this show, as I hope it is the goal of you watching, is to elevate this plant to its rightful place in society where it belongs. So
and
thank
to
you all
go
for
beyond
being
the
part of
high.
the journey.
Yeah, and to go beyond that high. It's not all about the high. That's number one. To understand the other benefits that this plant can bring, other than people just thinking it gets us high.
Amen to that. That's a way to close. Thank you guys so much. Mandy, thank you for your time. We'll see you again next week.
See you later, Sean.
See ya.